Have you ever wanted to write a book, but you're confused on where to start, why to start, how to start? Or maybe you feel like you don't have time to write your book because you're a busy mom, you're a busy dad, you're a busy professional, you're a busy entrepreneur. Well, you're going to love this conversation. Many years ago, when I launched my first book, that was in the year 2016, I met a man who was overwhelmed with surprise and he was wondering, how did you come about writing a book? And then he began to recount to me how he had always wanted to write a book from when he was 25 years old. And that was 25 years before that day when we were speaking. He said he had always had a dream, a burning desire to write a book, but he never came around to writing a book. And as I speak to you right now, he has still not written that book. But when he spoke to me that day, a seed was planted in my heart to help people who wanted to write a book to be able to write their book without struggle, without stress. Why? Especially because for me, writing my first book was like an accident. I didn't know I was even writing a book when I was writing it. How? How did I come about writing my first book? I'll tell you that story. I wrote my first book by basically putting together a couple of Facebook posts and Facebook articles that I had posted on Facebook over the period of 2 weeks to 1 month, and I put it together and I fleshed it out into a book. Before I did that, I was putting out those content, those articles on Facebook. And what were those articles? Those articles were simply things that I had thought about and that I felt they were really cool stuff that people needed to also listen to or hear about or read about. So I posted them on my Facebook timeline at that time, and people were responding and were like, wow, this is good. I was getting a lot of good feedback. And so it got to a point in time that people started asking me, when is the book coming out, right? So I wasn't even planning to write a book when I wrote my first book. So I just wrote it by accident. And the reason why I'm telling you this story is because you're listening to me right now, but you already have a book inside of you. What you're saying every day, what you're posting every day can be fleshed out to a book. Maybe you're listening to me and you've had lessons, you've had seminars, you've had sermons, you've had trainings, you've done things, or you've had engagements, you've had conversations with people that are meaningful. You can turn that conversation into a book. One of my favorite mentors had a 2 hour conversation, a round table conversation. In that 2 hour conversation, he was talking to some high level entrepreneurs about different strategies and different principles that can help them scale their business. And guess what? He recorded that 2 hour conversation and he turned it into a book. And today that book makes him 6 to 7 figures yearly. And guess what? All he did to write that book was a 2 hour conversation. And so in today, I'm going to show you how to write a book fast, even if you don't have time, without having to copy junk from ChatGPT. And I'm going to even tell you why you should not copy junk from ChatGPT, because many authors nowadays, they go on ChatGPT and they try to use that generative AI to generate text, and they copy it and paste it into their manuscript and they call that a book. Well, that's not a book. That's a bunch of junk mistaken for a book, right? And you don't want to do that if you're a first-time author or you want to write your next book. You want to write something that comes from within you. You want to write something that will, impact someone's life from within you. While there are some things you can use ChatGPT for, writing a book is not one of them. You can use ChatGPT to generate ideas, but you do not want to use ChatGPT to write a book. You don't want to copy stuff from ChatGPT and lift it and put it on your manuscript. As a matter of fact, platforms like Amazon KDP, they now have a way of checking manuscripts to make sure there are no AI generated text before allowing them to go on their platforms. And there are also plagiarism checkers out there that could also spot plagiarized information if you put them in your book without following due process for making reference to someone else's intellectual property. But that's by the way. In today's conversation, I want to focus on how you can write your book even if you don't have time. Did you know that the average busy entrepreneur, the average busy mom or busy dad spends at least 1 hour on social media? They spend at least 1 hour every day on social media. Now, if this is true, and it is because the facts are out there and the statistics are out there, now, if you spend 1 hour every day, 1 hour times 365 days would give you 365 hours, right? So this means that on average, you are able to, get 365 hours in a year. Now, this means that on average, no matter how busy you are as a professional, as an entrepreneur, as a busy mom, or as a busy dad, you can be able to get 1 hour, every day, and in the space of 365 days, or in the space of a year, you would have gotten 365 hours to yourself. Now, here's the reason why many people think that they don't have time to write a book. The idea of writing a book is broken. They have the wrong philosophy about what it takes to write a book. Many people think that writing a book means sitting down on a chair and, staring at your keyboard or staring at your laptop or staring at your computer and trying to figure out words that you should put together. That is the hard way to write a book. That is the hard way to write a book. And guess what? I've actually written a book like that before, where I'll just sit down for hours trying to think or dream up words that I should put together or dream up ideas that I should put together into my book. Because I'm an author of 17 books, so I've tried many different strategies to writing books because I wanted to figure out the best way, the most efficient way, the most optimized way, the most profitable way to do the task of writing a book. So I did it both the hard way and I also did it the easy way. So the hard way is to sit down for hours to write, right? And the easy way is to not sit down for hours. So you don't need to sit down for hours to write. Now, having addressed that myth, it means that you don't actually need to sit down for 6 to 8 hours daily to be able to write your book. Now, if you don't have to sit down for 6 to 8 hours slaving away at your keyboard just to write a book, then how can you write a book, especially when you don't have time and you don't want to copy junk from ChatGPT? Well, that's the purpose of this conversation. So stay around and don't go anywhere. Now, have you ever wondered how kings who happen to be very busy in their schedule, how do kings write their books, right? Or how do kings write? Have you ever wondered that? Now, no matter how busy you are, I believe you are not as busy as a king. And if you're listening to this as a king and you feel, well, I'm a king and so I'm busy, so I'm unable to write, even though I'm a king, I'm a prince of a kingdom or something like that, there's still a way around it because there are records of kings in the Bible and in contemporary history who have written lots of wonderful texts, who have written down their thoughts, their ideas in form of books, in form of proverbs, in form of songs, in form of poetry, in form of philosophical text, right? In form of ideologies, in form of templates for kingdoms to run. And so it behooves us to actually look into how these kings, despite their busy schedule, wrote their books in the days of old and in contemporary times. And I'll take a case study of the wisest man that ever lived, and his name is King Solomon. The Bible says that King Solomon, he wrote 1,005 proverbs, or rather, he wrote 1,005 songs, and then he wrote 3,000 proverbs. Now, how did King Solomon, despite his busy schedule, write 1,005 songs and 3,000 proverbs? And how is it that 90% of Americans, 90% of North Americans, 90% of the world's population, they go about having a desire to write a book in them, having a desire to write their next book in them, but they never come around to writing a book? And one of the biggest excuses they give is that they don't have time. Now, if they don't have time, how did one of the busiest men or one of the busiest people in our world get to write their books? How did kings write their books? Well, King Solomon was the son of King David, and King David says something in the book of Psalm 45 verse 1. He said, "My tongue is like the pen of a ready writer." Now, if you read this same verse from the Amplified, it says, "My tongue is like that of a skillful writer. So that means that if you have a tongue, you can write a book. You don't need time to write a book. All you need is a tongue. Is that not wonderful? Wow, that is amazing. If you have a tongue, you can write a book. And I'll break it down for you further. So if kings wrote books, if kings wrote songs, if they wrote proverbs by speaking, by using their tongue, then how did what they speak about, how did what they talk about become text? How did it become written text? How did they become books? Well, that was the job of scribes. So these guys, in the days of old, there was an occupation that was dedicated to people who were called scribes. Now, the job of a scribe was to write, to read, to copy, to edit the work of a king. So scribes usually would work in the king's palace, or they would work in a temple. In fact, in the days of Jesus Christ, we had the scribes. The scribes were referred to as custodians of the law because they were responsible for writing, copying, and editing the text that was referenced as scripture in those days, or historical text in those days. Now, interestingly, today we have a way to transcribe what we say. So even though we don't have official job or official occupation for scribes, we can now transcribe things with the use of technology, with the use of a phone, or with the use of a web browser. You can transcribe what you want to say or what you have said into text, and you can convert that transcript into a manuscript with the use of a few tips and tricks. So in the days of old, the kings would sit down in their palace and they would speak. They would share their wisdom, and the scribes would collect that information and write it down and put what they have said in written text and make it available for people to read. And the scribe's job was to put down what the king has said into written text. In today's world, if you have a message, you can transcribe it into text without sitting down to write. But the important thing to note is that you have to have a message. You have to have something to say, you have to have something worth saying, and you have to say it well. The problem most potential authors have now is not that they don't have time, but the problem is they don't know what to say, they don't know how to say what to say, or sometimes they don't have something good to say. And the reason why they don't have something good to say is because they have not spent time feeding their minds with the right information. So you want to be an author, you want to be a best-selling author, you want to be an acclaimed author, you want to be someone that writes words that transforms lives, then you have to be a person whose well runs deep. You have to be a person whose knowledge well runs deep. When people say they don't have time, most times what they lack is what to say and how to say it well. Sometimes people know what to say, but they don't know how to say it well. And because they don't know how to say it well, they are confused. And so because they are confused, they give the easy excuse of saying, I'm busy, I don't have time. But these same persons can be on a phone call for 30 minutes. This same person can be on social media for an hour. This same person can have an engaging conversation with people for hours. So if you can have an engaging conversation, if you can have a roundtable discussion for 2 hours, if you can have a phone conversation for 30 minutes, if you can have a phone conversation for 15 minutes, if you can jump on a Zoom call and speak for 10 minutes, it means you can write a book. Why? Because King Solomon wrote 1,005 songs and 3,000 proverbs. Despite he was a busy man, he did all of that because he engaged the services of scribes. And that was how the kings of old, who were known for their literary works, did. And so today you can transcribe your ideas, you can transcribe your thoughts into words that can be hung in the minds of people as pictures, right? But you have to have something good to say, and you have to know how to say it well, according to Jim Rohn. Now, having said that, there are three major problems. There are three problems that you must tackle to be able to use this strategy very well. And I'm going to show you these three problems. And once you're able to fix these three problems, all you need to do is to sit down and talk, speak, share your knowledge, share your message, and turn that into a book in a structured way. And before I share those 3 problems, I'd like you to know that if you talk for 30 minutes, that will give you about 3,900 words. And what you need to write a book is actually about 50,000 words or less. So what you need to write a book, a decent book, should be about 25,000 words to 50,000 words. And just talking for 30 minutes will give you 3,900 words. That means if you talk for 1 hour, and you say things that make sense, that can give you approximately 7,000 words, right? Approximately 7,000 words. Now, remember I told you that you have 365 hours, no matter how busy you are, you have 365 hours in a year that you can spare, no matter how busy you are. Whether you're a mom of 2, 3 kids, you're a busy dad, or you're a busy professional, or you're a busy entrepreneur, if you spare 1 hour every day, you have 365 hours in a year, right? So now that you have this bank of time that you can use, the goal is to use it well. And if you can talk for 30 minutes, I'm not even asking you to talk for 1 hour. If you can talk for 30 minutes and you can have 3,900 words, if you can do that consecutively for 10 days, that's 3,900 words times 10 days. That will give you a decent 39,000 words. Now, if you have 39,000 words of transcript, all you need to do is to convert that into a manuscript. Now, back to the 3 problems that could be stopping you right now that you need to avoid. Knowing all of this is not enough, right? You can know all of this and still not be able to write a book if you don't overcome these 3 problems. And these 3 problems is who, why, what. The who is, who should I be speaking to? The why is, why should they care to listen? And then the what is, what should I speak about? This is actually the real reason why many people cannot write a book, why they never write their books, or why they tell themselves they don't have time, or why they end up copying junk from ChatGPT. If you are able to figure out these 3 questions and figure out the correct answer for these 3 questions, and the answers to these 3 questions must be something you're proficient at, or you have access to proficiency by research, is something you have passion for, or you can develop passion by gaining interest in that thing, and it's something, it has to be something that is profitable. Once you can make sure you are able to answer these 3 questions with these 3 things in mind, proficiency, passion, and profitability, you'll be able to write your book fast, and you will not need to copy junk from ChatGPT, even if you don't have time, even if you're a busy mom, you're a busy dad, or you're a busy professional. So my assignment for you today is to tell me in the comments who you want to speak to, why you want to speak to them, and what you want to speak about by using your book. So simply, your book is just a medium to speak to people, but you have to know who, why, and what you want to speak about. So tell me in the comment section who you want to speak to, why you want to speak to them, and what you want to speak about. And make sure you have proficiency, passion, and profitability in mind as you come up with the answers to those questions. If you do these things, I guarantee you'll be able to write your first or next book in 30 days or less. I hope this blessed you. If you would like to get more personalized help or feedback on your current or next book project, I invite you to join me on the Publishing Profits Challenge. I'll drop the link for you in the description below or in the show notes, and definitely check it out. Have a good one, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.